I will start broadcasting.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Okay.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to a new session of our Sitecore user group Ecuador. This is our last session of the year. We are about to learn more about Sitecore analytics and business impact, and how to optimize your website using tools like Path Analyzer, X Profile, and Experience Analytics. So I am glad to have Jacqueline Baxter as our speaker today. She's a psycho strategy MVP with a range of experience implementing content and social media strategy, marketing automation plans, and conversion optimization tactics. So I will give the word to Jacqueline and welcome to our user group.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So I will start sharing my screen. We did a test and it worked. So
Right.
hopefully it will work this time. Alrighty. And I'm gonna hide that. Alrighty. Am I good? Everybody can see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Sitecore user group Ecuador. I've placed the hashtag at the bottom left of the screen in case you'd like to live tweet uh, any of this. Welcome again. My name is Jacqueline Baxter. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. I don't think I can do much better than that. So glad you're here. Let's get started. So we're going to talk about finding value in data today, and specifically how you can integrate that with Sitecore Analytics and tools like Path Analyzer and Page Analyzer that are provided for you in the Sitecore platform. So we start with one of my favorite quotations. Data is the oil of the 21st century, but oil is just useless, thick goop until you refine it into fuel. So quick agenda. We're going to start with the 360-degree view and talk about Sitecore Analytics and what sets it apart. We're going to take a moment so that I can get up on my personal soapbox and talk about engagement value. And then we're going to begin at the beginning. We're going to talk about how you find opportunity and then how you explore a lead, how you can find and understand your customers, and then how you can put it all together in a holistic analytics approach. And if at any point you have questions, I think we can add those in the chat window and have those called out to me at the end. We should have plenty of time. Alrighty, so getting started. So what sets Sitecore apart? So most platforms use a really high level of analytics aggregation, which divorces marketers from their customers. And the higher the level of analytics, the easier it is to make generalizations. And what that means is that you're missing valuable opportunities to engage with your customers on an individual level, because essentially they're just lost in a crowd, in a cloud of data. So you're missing those valuable opportunities to connect with them. And what sets Sitecore apart is that Sitecore is always focusing on the individuals. So what Sitecore Analytics, Experience Analytics allows you to do is to drill down into the individual behavior of each visitor rather than relying on high-level aggregations. It allows you to essentially find that one person in the enormous crowd of data and to separate that person out to understand how they're interacting with your brand and with your products. And that provides valuable insight into your customer funnel and into the user experience. Because what we're trying to do is build and analyze a complete picture of each customer. We want to consider not only where they are in the customer journey when we first start noticing and paying attention to them, but what actions they've taken to get there and what benchmarks they've reached. So because Sitecore Experience Analytics puts the individual customer at the center of measurement, all these people that come to your site are listed individually in X profile along with the actions they've taken on your site. And that not only improves customer experience and intelligence and customer loyalty, but it actually reduces costs over time. Because the more intelligent and data driven a marketing campaign is, overall, the more successful that it's going to be. So you have a large opportunity using all of these tools to decrease the costs over time, which is always something that the C-suite likes to hear. So we're going to start with sort of the 30,000-foot view of your brand and sites, which is what the overall experience analytics platform does. And before we do that, I just really quickly wanted to show the metrics in Sitecore 8 versus the metrics in Sitecore 9. It's important to note that this data actually exists in 8. All the data exists. It's just that the reporting out of the box is much more specific in Sitecore 9. So if you have clients, or if your organization personally is thinking about, oh, maybe it's time to upgrade to Sitecore 9, you do get a lot more reporting options out of the box with Sitecore 9. And you can get this information in Sitecore 8 as well. As I said, it just isn't as easily accessible. It's much easier to get it in Sitecore 9. So something to keep in mind if you're thinking about upgrading. So I promised you my personal soapbox, and we have come to it. Measuring value, and specifically value per visit. And this is where we get to talk about engagement value. Hooray! So engagement value is Sitecore's way of sort of quantifying micro conversions. And what Sitecore allows you to do is to tag specific content with a numeric value in lieu of a hard conversion metric. And what that lets you do is gain greater insight, not only into your users' behavior, but into their customer journey. The concept of engagement value was specifically introduced to help measure the quality of a customer visit, because a high level of engagement value indicates, or high value per visit indicates, that a visitor is taking the desired actions, and each piece of engagement value is relative to the visitor's level of, or should be, I shouldn't say is automatically, because you build your own engagement value scale, but it should be relative to the visitor's level of communication, of their trust, and their commitment. So this is a sample that I put together specifically for this presentation, because I'm a social media person. I love social media. I spend a lot of time on it and thinking about how we can use it to optimize the customer experience and personalize off of it. So it's important to me to know if a visitor has shared an article on their social media account from our website. That does indicate a level of interest in our brand. They've taken that action. People don't always share things on social media, so that's valuable. But it's probably not as valuable as them signing up for a newsletter, for example. A social media share is a one-off, whereas a newsletter sign up, I don't know about you guys, but I sign up for newsletters and I never unsubscribe. They just keep coming and coming and coming. And so a newsletter sign up should probably be a little bit higher on that engagement value scale, whereas something like filling out a contact us form, or even at the sort of peak engagement, buying something, purchasing a product, sort of the highest level that you can be at. And if you have goals in Sitecore, which you should have goals, um, all goals with engagement value points should move the visitor toward a strategic objective. So that's functionally what all of each of these individually would be a goal: sharing an article, downloading a brochure, registering for a webinar. Each of those you'd probably have set up in your marketing control panel as a goal with the engagement value attached. I cannot stress enough how important this is. Engagement value is a foundational part of Sitecore marketing. It really isn't optional. You have to do this. If you are hoping to use some of the other pieces of Sitecore analytics and functionality, A/B testing, for example, it all rests on engagement value. A/B testing is actually a perfect example of something that, without engagement value, without goals, all your A/B tests will flatline. So you have to have it set up. It's so worthwhile to take the time within your organization to develop, implement, and consistently apply your engagement value scale. I recommend that you write it down. I recommend that you store it in a very clear and obvious location where every content editor and every content creator can look at it and can see it. and has access to it so that you can consistently apply it over time. And the other thing to keep in mind is that this is not, we're not, chiseling it in stone. This is something that you will go back and look at over time and figure out if the goals are appropriate, if the engagement value you've assigned to them is appropriate. So you're not stuck with this for the entirety of your site's existence. It is possible to change and optimize over time. And in fact, that's something that you definitely should be doing. So engagement value and value per visit are related, but a little bit different because engagement value is applied to your user's contact and it allows you to determine how valuable the visit is. So the value per visit comes from the engagement value that they collect as they go through the site. And as with all analytics, the aggregation of your contact value is provided for you as well in the online interactions, as I have highlighted there for you. And when it comes to, again, individual visitors, engagement value is based on user actions like goals. And then it can be stored can and is stored in the X profile of the individual contact. And that is true whether the contact is unknown or known. So the engagement value and the value per visit, if they're collecting it, will still be in there. Whether the contact is registered as known or unknown depends on the privacy levels and privacy software that you have on your site. Okay. Yes. Okay. And so this is where we start to talk about how we use engagement value and how you can use it to start optimizing your site. So having one of the things that I like to look for is what I call a mismatch in engagement metrics. And this is one of my favorites, one of the things that's sort of the most glaring, and that's something like low value per visit, but a high number of visits. So this is something where this is a page where you don't actually have trouble driving traffic to the page, right? That's not the problem. People are coming in constantly, but they're not collecting engagement value. They're not interacting with your brand. They're not completing those goals and taking those actions that would sort of move them along the customer journey and the customer funnel. And that's an excellent thing to know because it tells you where you want to spend your money, because you don't need to spend it on traffic generation. You need to spend it on engagement tactics and spend your money on improving conversions. This is one of those times where I think personalization is probably really helpful. If you can determine where the traffic is coming from and try to tailor the page for those people, you might see a big difference. And then the swap in that, just sort of turning that around, the high value per visit, low number of visits. So this is exactly the opposite, where when people come to the page, they are taking those actions, they're engaging with your brand, engaging with the site, and moving along, hitting those touch points as you would hope that they would. There just aren't very many of them. And so that's another valuable thing to know, because when people are coming to the page, they're finding exactly what they're looking for. You just need to get more of those people to the page. So now you know that you can spend your money on traffic generating tactics. And these are two of those places. Looking for engagement mismatches in general are some of those places where you can save time and money over the length of various campaigns, because you're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Now you're looking at the numbers and saying, okay, we're going to run a targeted campaign to do this instead of just trying to do everything at once. So those are two of my favorites, but they're not the only two. Couple of other options, things you can look for are page views per visit. That's pretty similar to high number of visits, but a low engagement value. If people are coming to your website and they're viewing 5, 10, 15 pages and they're not converting, they're not finding what they're looking for. So there's something to look at there. And similar with time on site, if people are coming to your site, they're looking around and they're staying for quite a while, but they're not converting, that's an opportunity to look at optimization. And so where can you identify a mismatch in experience analytics? I'm glad you asked. You start by going into the experience analytics panel. You can access that off the Sitecore Launchpad. And for the purposes of this conversation, we're mostly going to be focused on the things under the red on the far left side of the screen where it says dashboard. That's the first thing that we're going to be looking at. Because we're going to be using dimensions and segments to zoom in on paths where your time and money can make the biggest impact. So the first thing we look at is dimensions. Dimension is functionally a summarization of a value. So again, under that dashboard side, you see these categories: audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions. Interestingly enough, those are not dimensions. Dimensions are things like languages, channels, internal search, or my personal favorite, goals. And functionally, dimension determines how visits are analyzed and which fact the data is summarized on. And once you click into your chosen dimension, you'll be shown segments, because what segments do is determine which visits are analyzed within a dimension. So if you're looking at languages, it's going to give you all the language options that are available to you that you can click into. It's also going to do that for channels, or again, it's going to do it for the goals, and the goals they pop up as the ones that you define yourself. It's always a pretty helpful situation. And once you click into, so we've gone dimension and then we've gone segment. And once you click into the segment, you're always going to see the same thing, which is the metrics. A metric is exactly what it sounds like. It is a measurement, a count of a characteristic or a value that is tracked for the specific dimension and assigned to a segment. So you're almost always going to see visits, page views per visit, and then the average duration of the visit. And so now we put that all together, and this is what you're looking for. So we're going to try to find opportunities, and we're doing that exactly the way we've talked about. We're just going to put all of these pieces together. So I built this fun example for you, and as I said, I am a social media person, so I picked LinkedIn as one of the options to highlight. And as you can see, with this LinkedIn, we're doing pretty well on traffic. It's a high number of visits, almost 1 million visits. That's great. Nothing wrong with our acquisition tactics there, but the value per visit is low. The value per visit, once people are coming to the site, they're coming in very high numbers, but they are not finding what they're looking for, and they're not converting. And again, this is one of those times where I find that personalization is probably very handy. One of the sort of disconnects that I sometimes see between social media platforms and websites is that you advertise one thing on your Facebook, and when the visitor clicks on your Facebook ad and comes to the site, they don't always immediately see what they're looking for. So creating that sort of seamless user experience between platforms is something personalization is really good for. So that's something to look at there. And then down at the bottom, we have the other end of the spectrum, just flipping it around, where we don't have as many visits. This example always makes me laugh, even though I'm the one who built it. I've never had an email campaign that went this well. But as you can see, the value per visit is very high. So when people come to our website from the email, they are finding what they are looking for. They're staying for quite a while, which is excellent. And so those are the kinds of things that we just need to get more people to come from the emails, get more people signed up for the email account. And in both of those cases, looking at these numbers, we have more information than we did before. We know where people are coming from. We know what people are looking for to a certain extent, or at least we know that they're not finding what they're looking for. Having this information, it's possible to go back to email campaigns and start looking through and seeing, okay, well, what did we do that was so successful here? And start drilling down a little bit further, getting closer and closer to the actual customer to see what we've done right and what we can do better. And speaking of what we can do right and what we can do better, this brings me to one of my very favorite tools, Path Analyzer. And this is going to bring us, so remember we started with the 30,000 foot view of our customer with Experience Analytics. And now with Path and Page Analyzer, we're getting even closer. We're going to go into the 10,000 foot view of user journeys and also their interactions with an experience. Path Analyzer is just a really cool functionality. It lets you essentially map the path that your visitors take as they travel through your website, and to create custom maps based on different data points and experience types, everything from first-time visitors to specific campaign interactions. If anyone ever here has ever used Google Flow, it's similar. I actually like Path Analyzer a little bit better. I think it's a little more customizable, so I'm a bigger fan of it because of that. And Path Analyzer also lets you visually understand paths through the site based on things like traffic, engagement, and efficiency. Caveat, like A/B testing, Path Analyzer does work best when goals and events are functioning across and through your website, and not just goals and events, but goals and events with attached engagement value. Um, it's Path Analyzer, again, much like A/B testing, to a certain extent, works based on trailing engagement value. And engagement value gives Path Analyzer something to measure so that it's better at determining which paths are most successful. It will still work without those things, but you won't have the pretty colors. And the pretty colors are part of what makes it so fabulous. It's definitely one of those, again, foundational tasks that makes your life a million times simpler if you plan it out from the beginning. Goals and events, as I said, help Path Analyzer more clearly identify paths that are successful or not, as well as which content works well and which content should be optimized. So we're going to do something pretty similar to what we did above. Just going to start looking at paths. So finding a path with a higher number of visits but a lower value per visit does present a lot of opportunities. As we discussed earlier, these pages need conversion and engagement tactics, so you can spend your money there. There's actually another really good example here that I don't have specifically highlighted. If you look to the right of the screen, there's the green node that's surrounded by all the red nodes. That's another excellent opportunity for investigation because we're clearly doing something right on one of those paths that is not happening on the other ones. So good opportunity to go in and look at that kind of stuff. And then just flipping it around, once you find a highly converting path, you can save it as a funnel without alteration, or you can build one that suits your specific tracking needs in the marketing control panel. So this segment could use traffic generating tactics, which means that's where we want to spend our money. And we can actually use the next stage in this page analyzer in order to investigate where the traffic is coming from and where we're losing them. Because page analyzer allows you to narrow in on paths to and from the specific page that you're interested in. So you can jump on in and take a look at a specific page. And what I like the most about this specific example is that it lets you see examples of user traffic that does convert and user traffic that does not. So we can study the incoming paths to see what those that result in high engagement value have that we might be able to utilize. And it also lets you know if this is a poor performing page in general or if it's only a poor performing page under certain circumstances. And that's one of those things that can sometimes lead to disagreements on a marketing team, where people start to say, "Well, how do we know? We don't know what the customers are thinking." And that's actually where we can jump back into uh, Path Analyzer, and we can actually access the individual contacts that have visited the specific path. And that helps us build a targeted marketing strategy for those specific users, right? To drive more traffic to a highly converting page. So it's very good at settling disagreements because you actually can jump in and look at these specific contacts. And you can do that from the X profile, which is also on the Launchpad, or you can use this very handy shortcut and just jump into this specific contact from this specific path. Just jump into X profile and see it directly from there. And that brings us to, as I said, X profile, which is the ground view of an individual visitor who is interacting with your brand. So we've gone again from the 30,000 foot view to the 10,000 foot view, and now we're on the ground, interacting with an individual visitor who is in turn interacting with the brand. So just a quick overview of X profile, using this example that I definitely did not make up for my own entertainment. When you click into an individual customer in X profile, you're going to start in the overview tab. And the overview tab will show you all kinds of interesting things like the latest personalization event that that particular customer engaged with. It will also show you the current best pattern match. It is important to note that pattern matches can change over time as the guest continues to interact with content. You have pattern matches sort of sprinkled throughout your website. It's possible that that will change. But for now, this is the best pattern match. And if they came in from a campaign or matched a campaign at any point, interacted with a campaign, it will also tell you that. And then we can switch over. There's a lot more stuff on the X profile. This is just sort of the top of the overview tab. And then once you start clicking over, as I said, you start in the overview, and then you can see into activity, you can see into profiling. The activity page gives you access to all kinds of fun stuff, including visits, goals, and my personal favorite, marketing automation campaigns. And it will record all of that information and store it in the profile. It does include both anonymous users and known users. And there is a Sitecore Global Analytics cookie tracking that information. I have had, and I know of, your mileage may vary, especially now that GDPR is in place with how effective that is at merging those contacts. But in theory, Sitecore should be constantly merging the contact records in order to store all of that data. And so that's the activity tab, which is pretty cool. You also get this visual representation up at the top of whether they came in from various campaigns, opportunities, when they switched from known to unknown. So the timeline is pretty fun to take a look at. And then we come to my very favorite tab, which is the X profile tab. Or I'm sorry, the profiling tab in the X profile. Wow. And what this will show you is the best pattern match, but it also shows you the other pattern matches that uh, this particular contact is starting to engage with. And so, as I said, it's possible for a pattern match to change over time. And for example, I find it pretty interesting when we have a really close percentage between two pattern matches, like we do for child safety and fitness. I did use the Habitat Home demo instance for this, in case anyone is like, wow, this looks familiar. That's why. um, and this is where sometimes if you can't find any obvious similarities between the contacts, this is a good place to come and see if maybe it's the pattern matches, because this will tell you to some extent what activities they've been engaged with on your website, so that you can get a better view of them as an individual. And that brings us to the holistic approach. So we've got all of these pieces. We've got experience analytics, we've got path and page analyzer, we've got X profile, and we have all of this information about how to identify engagement mismatches, to look for opportunity, to find opportunity, and to put that opportunity to work for us and for our businesses. And we're going to start by using experience analytics to analyze segments and also to identify opportunities and weaknesses. And once we've done that, then we're going to bring Path Analyzer into the equation. We're going to use Path Analyzer to review traffic flow. What we're looking for is high or poor performing experiences. And once we've identified those, then we're going to use X profile to investigate individuals within a path and determine if your tactic will work for this specific person or for this specific group of people. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I'm always happy to talk about this. I'm on Twitter, I'm on the Sitecore community Slack, also email. Happy to talk about it at basically any time of the day or night. if you'd like to get in touch. And we also have, as I promised, plenty of time for questions. So if anyone has any questions now,
Yeah, I have two questions.
excellent.
One should be if someone wants to join to this marketing world on Sitecore, do you have like an advice how to start with?
Yes, I love that we're called a marketing world. That's very exciting for me personally. Um, I I would say that the community Slack has been a wonderful resource. Um, I think I can only speak for myself, but I learn a lot by poking around and seeing how far I can get before I get stuck, and then turning to the community and seeing if they have any answers for that. Um, I guess it depends on what you mean by the marketing community. Um, if you mean just get it, to get a job in Sitecore marketing or with a client who does Sitecore marketing versus hanging out at our table at Symposium, which are we don't have a table. I shouldn't say that because everybody's going to say, "Where's the table?" Um, but we're a pretty open group. All in all, everybody is looking to share and help everyone improve. I learn just as much from answering questions as I do from asking them. So you can definitely always hit me up individually, or as I said, the community Slack is a great resource.
Okay. At the beginning, you mentioned something about like be careful when you're migrating from Sitecore 8 to 9. Is there any tool that we need to use for that?
From migrating from 8 to 9, I don't know of any specific tool. Um, the When I was talking about migrating specifically, I think that Sitecore 9 is just a much more robust platform in several ways. Not just with the reporting in analytics, although that's what that specific slide was about, but in terms of Sitecore Forms, in terms of EXM, the marketing automation suite in Sitecore 9 is vastly superior to engagement plans. Shout out to anyone who, like me, has spent hours trying to make engagement plans work. The time has passed, hooray! Um, but I don't know of any tools that make it easier. Um, I also tend not to deal too much with the actual developer centric aspect of the migration. I tend to come in at the end and fix the content.
Great. So I don't have any more questions. Do you have any final words?
No, not at all. But I'm happy if you do think of questions, if you're having dinner tonight and go, oh, I wish I'd asked. Feel free to reach out to me on any of these channels. I'm always happy to discuss.
Okay, great. So first, I want to thank you, Jacqueline. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I hope you come back again soon with other
Absolutely.
exciting topics like the one you just presented. So
Well,
we
thank you
will
so
be
much for
glad.
having me. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks again. And this brings us to the end of the sessions. And I would like to close this year at the Sitecore User Group Ecuador by wishing everyone happy holidays. So see you next year. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.